Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm very glad to be joined this morning by my colleagues in the State Senate, our Budget Chair, Senator Denise Ducheney, the Chair of our Health Committee, Senator Elaine Alquist, the Chair of our Labor Committee and in charge of our reform efforts, Senator Mark DeSaulnier. Welcome to you. We have Senator Lois Wolk, the Chair of our Rev and Tax Committee, Senator Mark Leno, the Chair of our Public Safety Committee, and Senator Dean Flores, our Majority Leader and Chair of our Food and Ag Committee. And I'm Darrell Steinberg. I'm President Pro Tem of the Senate. We are also joined this morning by the Treasurer of the State of California, Bill Lockyer. Thank you, Bill, for joining us, as well as two of the leaders from the California State Association of Counties, its Executive Director, Paul McIntosh, and Supervisor Mike McGowan from Yolo County, who is a member of CSAC's Reform and Restructuring Board. Let me make a couple of opening comments, tell you why we are here today. We know the following. The no budget plan on the table today addresses California's lingering long-term budget deficit. Our challenge now, not next year or the year after, is to find a way to save essential investments in education, health, and public safety while beginning to deliver many of these services at a level of government closer to the people. There is no question that the magnitude of our budget challenge relates directly to the dramatic drop in investment since the beginning of the worldwide recession in 2008. California began that year with a $102 billion budget. It now stands at $86 billion. State spending is at its lowest when measured on personal income in nearly 40 years. State revenue dropped nearly 20% during this same time period. Over the past two budget cycles, we have made program reductions of over $35 billion in essential state investments. And we've all seen the results. School districts have issued thousands of pink slips. Class sizes have increased. 300,000 women no longer receive preventative breast exams. The litany is long and it is painful. Investment is imperative if we are to avoid even deeper cuts to education, health care, and vital infrastructure. Investment is also essential to avoid more layoffs and reduce the unacceptable 12.5% unemployment rate in our state. But the purpose of this press conference and this announcement is to also say the following. Investment to prop up this failed structure for just this year is not a formula for political or policy success. The governor's May revision is unacceptable, but it also illustrates the scope of the long-term problem that we face. If we were to make all the cuts the governor called for in his budget, elimination of the safety net for kids, 75% reduction in in-home supportive services, complete elimination of child care, multi-billion-dollar hit to public education. If we did all of that, and of course we won't, but if we did all of that, we would have a $6 billion deficit next year. We need a government that is more efficient and more accountable. We need a budget that accelerates our economic recovery, not kill it. And we need a plan that begins to get California off the deficit roller coaster and on a path to sustain fiscal stability. Our proposal today calls for a multi-year restructuring plan that begins to transfer $4 to $5 billion of health, human services, and public safety investments from the state to the counties, along with the resources to administer these programs effectively. Why go to all this trouble to restructure, some may ask? Since the passage of Proposition 13, state government has largely become a pass-through. The state raises the money, and we give it to school districts and counties who deliver the services. This convolution requires multiple levels of administration for the same programs. It shields from the people a clear understanding of who to hold accountable for the delivery of essential services. It stifles innovation, as 58 counties are generally bound to operate under uniform state mandates. And maybe most important, the state's current structure cannot confidently assure Californians that it can consistently deliver what the people expect according to its own laws. Our restructuring proposal is not a panacea. There is no great panacea here. But it begins to think and act in California's long-term best interests. The proposal fixes a big part of what is wrong with California government right now, and it puts us on a path to sustain fiscal stability. The importance of restructuring our government is something Californians already understand very well. On June 8th, 75% of local ballot measures, funding everything from education to health care to transportation, passed. From Calexico to Mendocino, voters said they are willing to pay for quality public investments if they know how the money will be spent and who is accountable for the program's administration. Some will argue that restructuring, oh my God, eyes glaze over, it's too complicated, and that it's too difficult in this environment in an election year to think about and begin acting on restructuring a plan that will take 3 to 5 years to accomplish. And I ask this question to the critics. Compared to what? To our current path of decimating education, public safety, and refusing a helping hand to the poor? The message from the voters on June 8th is clear. They want to pay for services. They just want to make sure that they are delivered efficiently, and they want to make sure that they are brought to a level closer to the people. We have an opportunity in the summer of 2010, even during an election year, to chart a smarter path. Now, I'm going to hand it over to some of the other speakers here, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to run through some of our outline here, which is part of the press packet, because we're not just putting out a theory here. We actually have a specific proposal that we will ask the Budget Conference Committee to begin to digest and to discuss. Let me ask the State Treasurer. You sure? Senator Ducheney.
Thank you very much. I don't have that much to add and to more to answer questions, but I think it isn't the chart that somebody's handing out. This is my favorite show and tell this year. But is the chart of complication we have created since Prop 13. Sorry, 72. I always get the Prop 13. People have done all of these different things, really, in essence, to try to get around it. Prop 98, redevelopment. We've dedicated funds. We've untaken them. We've moved them back to property tax, and it's exemplary of the problem that we've lost the connection. Once upon a time, before 1978, people raised money at the local level. The city council could do something. The county supervisors could do something. The school board. And they could raise the money and go to their local voters and say, this is how I want to spend it, and this is what it's going to be for. We've sort of lost that connection in life. And now it all seems to come to the state, although all of it, the property tax, all of it stays local. But nobody understands that anymore, that all property tax remains in the county in which it's raised. But it goes to the counties, it goes to the cities, it goes to special districts, and it goes to school boards. It doesn't go anyplace else. But somehow it's all the state who somehow is the person who's taken the money and done something with it that nobody can figure out. We need to restore that sense of confidence and connection between who's accountable for spending the dollars and who's accountable for raising them, and hopefully this is certainly just a proposal. We need a lot of input from members and from stakeholders and from folks around, including we appreciate the work of CSAC in trying to help us understand, because the closest connection we have is the counties who deliver services on our part now, who are there in part as an agency of the state, and who are delivering most of these health and human services at a county level. They do a good job with a lot of those programs, and we need to give them, however we can, greater flexibility and incentives to be more innovative. In cases where counties have done that, certainly, in foster care and some of the other areas, they've done some really great work. We need to give counties the room to make some of those things work, to protect their local communities and to protect the resources that will allow them to have the quality of life that their residents require.
Thank you, Senator Cheney. Let me now ask Supervisor Mike McGowan and Paul McIntosh, both from CSAC, to come on up. And I just want to say parenthetically, none of this works. None of this works without a partnership in development and in implementation between the state and the counties. Because Senator Cheney's right. The political line around here is look what the state's doing to the counties. Look what the state's doing to the cities. We're all in it together here. We're all part of a failed system, and together we can change it. Mike? Paul?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it very much, and we appreciate the opportunity to stop on by. Just briefly, on behalf of the California State Association of Counties, we want to thank the President Pro Tem for inviting us over to discuss our perspective on this restructuring of the state and local relationship. The current governance of these important programs and services is just not working. It's almost, if not completely dysfunctional, and certainly unsustainable. You only have to ask the counties up and down, the 58 counties of California up and down the state. We've been slashing our budgets in response to the economy, loss of tax revenues, and certainly the actions and cuts from the state of California. We are the ones on the ground. We are at ground zero. We're walking point, and we do have to deal with these things on a regular basis and very directly. All of this, of course, these challenges we have are before the impacts of the state budget are really known, and we're all very interested and concerned about what's about to happen here. So the alternatives before us really are not very good. We share in the President Pro Tem's concern about the governor's proposal, which really is yet another shifting of costs to counties, directly to counties, and exacerbating our problem. And this is without any sort of reform or restructuring of the responsibilities which we currently have and which are devastating our counties, our budgets, and our ability to provide the services that our constituents have come to expect and believe in. We stand for maintaining and providing safe, healthy, and sustainable communities, and we are greatly challenged in that task at this time. And so the President Pro Tem's proposal is a start. It is a start, as a beginning to an important and long overdue discussion. Counties have not been involved to the extent we should have, and quite frankly and candidly, we haven't engaged from our own fault sufficiently in the past, and we're here to change that. Clearly, the state realizes, the President Pro Tem realizes he cannot do this just within the confines of this building. There has to be a better partnership, a better association and relationship built between especially counties, who are an arm of the state, but also the other local jurisdictions as well, and the state. We're encouraged because Senator Steinberg has committed to working with the counties and cities, but in this case primarily with the California State Association of Counties, towards a plan that does not shift state costs to counties. It truly has to be a reformation, a restructuring, and a realignment of the tasks and the responsibilities and the fundings. We'll now have the opportunity to fully vet with our members and other stakeholders, and we look forward to this conversation and our role in hoping to help restructure state and local government here in California. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good morning. I'm Paul McIntosh, the Executive Director, excuse me, my voice, Executive Director of the California State Association of Counties. I'm not an elected official, so I can be much briefer. Make no mistake,
But you work for the former Executive Director.
Former Executive Director, I've been told. Make no mistake, the task before us is daunting, given the time frame that's available, given the potential scale of a restructuring that we're talking about, and the scope of the budget deficit. Counties, however, California counties are prepared to do the hard work that's necessary, recognizing the significant challenges that are ahead. Our focus is going to be on a restructuring plan that gives counties the opportunity to restore and support healthy, safe, and sustainable communities, that stabilizes funding for important community programs, that creates efficiencies and flexibility in program delivery at the local level, and that secures adequate revenues to fund such activities. Counties are committed to rolling up our sleeves and doing the hard work necessary to create a sustainable, equitable solution, and we look forward to working with all parties as discussions and negotiations on this restructuring continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And my Treasurer Lockyer, who's been involved in a budget or two throughout his time. Welcome. Thank you.
It seemed to be easier when I was doing it. I want to compliment the senators for their creative efforts to try to make something work long term. The current situation of patching a leaking ship every year just has to end. We've got to do some rebuilding. And so I think this is a wonderfully interesting proposal that doesn't address the underlying fight about spending versus cuts, but it begins to implement what Dick Nixon did with block grants, what Ronald Reagan did with devolution and shifting program responsibility to local agencies, to do the same thing in California. 75% of the state budget is money that comes to the state and is recycled to local agencies. We don't need to do that. It's less efficient, and program accountability and political responsibility should rest more significantly with local agencies. I don't miss an opportunity to try to point out, in talking about these matters, the Pew Foundation statistics. California has the second thinnest state government in the United States. And when you add in local agencies, school districts, cities, counties, special districts, we have the fourth thinnest government in the United States. I don't know what those conservatives are doing in Kansas and Nebraska to overspend like they are, but we have a thin government, but it's going to get thinner with this proposal, and I welcome that change. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. Let me just spend a brief moment, and I'd refer you to pages 3 through 6 of the documents that we passed out to you, just to get a sense of how our proposal would work. This is a 3 to 4 year restructuring plan because you can't do it all in 1 year. And I think it's very important to reiterate a point that Supervisor McGowan made a moment ago. The governor's plan, respectfully, is actually the harshest form of realignment, because by eliminating CalWorks, by eliminating child care, by severely reducing in-home supportive services, essentially the message is you at the local level, you take care of all the people in need, and there's no money for you. This is an intelligent way to begin making the size of state government smaller and at the same time maintaining the essential services for people. And how we do it is as follows. We set up 3 sub-accounts. Namely, we would look to take some of public safety functions around juvenile parole services, which has already started, the beginning of a discussion with local law enforcement about shifting low-level criminal offenders, drug and property crime offenders to counties for incarceration and community supervision, to maintain the existing funding for cops, juvenile justice, but we would make all of it a county responsibility with the dollars necessary to continue them. Account 2, we would shift drug Medi-Cal programs to counties, shift offender treatment programs to counties. We then moved to Health and Human Services, where over the course of 4 years, we'd shift $2.6 billion over 4 years. We'd begin to shift CalWorks and the county share of costs greater to the counties over the years. We would increase the county share of county welfare automation costs. We would begin shifting CalWorks child care to counties. And then in Part 3, we would take some of the aging services for adults programs, which are small now, but likely will grow, and we would make them locally provided services with the revenue. How would we pay for this? Fair question. Never thought you'd ask. We would take some of the Assembly's structure when it comes to the financing here, the majority vote oil severance tax proposal, which can be done with an oil severance tax. It can also be done with a sales tax. It all has to do with unwinding the infamous triple flip, and it would generate $1.2 billion a year. The other main piece of this, as you know, we already give 0.15 of the vehicle license fee to local law enforcement for law enforcement functions. We would take the temporary increase, which we did last year, from 0.65 to 1.15, and we would make the 1.15 permanent, well below the 2%, by the way, that the VLF was in 1998, and we would dedicate all of those dollars, just like the 0.15, we dedicate all those dollars to local law enforcement. We would also put off the implementation of the corporate tax breaks for 2 years. They haven't gone into effect yet, and we think when it comes to these important priorities here and what could be eliminated for people, that the choice there is clear. We would also account for the fact that under federal health care reform, beginning in 2013-14, counties will be freed from at least $500 million of responsibility for caring for their indigent population. That's another revenue stream that can be used for realignment. And finally, we suggest that we would take some of the state's existing tax base temporarily in 2012-13 and 13-14 and shift it to the counties to be able to provide these services. Any of my colleagues, senators, want to say a word or two? You're welcome to, if you would like. If not, okay. Why don't we stand for questions, and we thank you for coming today.
Carol, you mentioned in your opening remarks about the idea of a single-year solution, you wanting a multi-year plan. Are you referring to the Assembly plan
No.
as well as the government? The reason I asked that question is that you obviously have different approaches.
We do.
Repeatedly, the conference committee has reached a dead end because they couldn't make decisions without knowing what the revenue structure was going to be. And obviously you're not in agreement on that revenue structure. So where are you on this?
Well, we're going to continue to work, and the Speaker and I are committed to getting together and presenting a unified plan. We'll be working throughout the week together. But look, I will say this. The Assembly plan, in my view, is certainly better than the governor's plan because it at least saves essential investments and essential services for a year. Where we have a difference is our belief, and maybe the fact that this is now my fifth budget as a principal, and we're all tired, frankly, of propping up this structure, which, in my view, does not work for the people of California. We cannot confidently say every year we're going to have the resources to provide the services and the investments that are needed. The difference is that we believe it is essential to take a multi-year approach to the problem so that, and even though no matter what we do, I'm going to be real honest, no matter what we do, we're not saying here we're eliminating the out-year deficit. But we're certainly making it better to the tune of $3 to $4 to $5 billion every year, and that is the path we have to pursue.
Senator, I have sort of a three-part question. One of them is you talk a lot about delaying the corporate tax breaks. So what happens after the corporate tax breaks? What guarantees do counties and cities have that the state won't come back and try to take that money again? And you also mentioned counties will have the ability to raise additional revenues, but I don't see anything in here about what revenues and how they'll be able to raise them.
First of all, we have three permanent sources of revenue in our proposal. Number one, we make the 1.15 temporary VLF surcharge permanent. Number two, we do either an oil severance or a single flip, which is permanent. And then we account for the permanent savings for counties once federal health care reform is implemented. The second part of the question?
Well, you talk about the delays here, the corporate tax breaks.
No, I'm just saying the delay of the corporate tax breaks are a bridge to get to a more fundamental restructuring. And the other part of the question was?
The question was you talk about giving counties the ability to raise additional revenue.
Well,
I don't see any explanation.
It isn't in here, but our members here, I know Senator Leno, Senator DeSonia, I believe Senator Wolk, others, Senator Duccini, we have a number of bills that would give local governments the authority to raise revenue with less than a two-thirds supermajority vote. Those are pending.
And the last part of it was how do the counties protect themselves from further shifts that the state seems to be doing year after year?
Well, one of the reasons why the state does the shifts, and again, I really I reject the notion that it in any way that it is us versus them when it comes to different levels of government. My constituents are the same as Kevin Johnson's constituents, and you know what? They care about police and fire service, but they're also sending their kids to the public schools and to the University of California and the community colleges. So we gotta end the us versus them, because we're all part of the failed system together, and we must change it. And so what protects the counties? The number one protection for the counties will be the state getting its fiscal house in order. That's the number one protection for the counties.
Things that the state's already doing, why do we need additional $3 billion to $4 billion?
Because we picked things that the state is partially doing, but that the counties are also doing. And so we're going to ask the counties to do more. And to ask them to do more, we need to provide them with the resources to be able to carry out those functions.
These are the same revenue increases that Republicans have already said they don't support.
Yes, but let's step back for just a moment. We are talking about extending an existing revenue increase, the 1.15. We are talking about a temporary delay of corporate tax breaks that haven't gone into effect yet. And we are talking about either an oil severance tax or a sales tax that our council, I think pretty undisputed, has said can be done on a majority vote basis. So when you talk about a tax package, there are no new big tax in this package. It really is just a continuation of what is already on the books. And if that's what it takes to bridge to a better structure of government that gets us out of this year after year after year wallowing of what are we going to do to make sure that we stand for kids and stand for the elderly and stand for people and at the same time, quote, live within our means, this is essential.
But it would take a two-thirds vote for at least some elements to continue the BLS.
Yes.
To postpone the corporate tax rate to take a two-thirds vote of this legislation.
As I would point out, the assembly plan would require the same, and even the governor's plan with the ERI, right? The Emergency Response Initiative requires some part of a two-thirds vote. Sure, yes, requires some two-thirds vote. But look if you're going to plant your flag around revenue. If you're going to plant your flag around some reasonable revenue, plant it next to a long-term plan to restructure government in California.
Do you have numbers for budget savings for the upcoming budget year over the 4 years?
We know this. We know that the current Senate version of the budget has about a $2 billion hole. In year one, we seek to shift more than that to the counties. Now, in fairness, some of the revenue in the existing Senate plan is also in the restructuring plan. And so we are still working out the numbers, but we know this. We know that we got to continue to fight for the federal dollars, the FMAP. But we know that if we do this, that we can narrow the remaining deficit for this year to a very small number.
So this package would reduce the deficit?
Yes, it would, significantly.
You don't have a ballpark on how significantly?
This would, if this were adopted, this would, I don't have an exact number for you, but it would shrink it to a very small number.
Do you think the Assembly plan would pass legal muster?
I don't know. I really don't know. You know, we've all looked at the Brown opinion, and again, the Speaker and I, our houses are gonna end up working together on this stuff. Right now, we just take a different approach. But I'll commend the Assembly for trying to be creative, for trying to focus on jobs, and for doing what it can to save services. That's number one. But the difference is we can save the services this year, but what happens next year if we wake up with a $10 or $12 billion hole? We'll be right back here with then fewer options with which to deal with the challenge.
Does that mean you oppose the idea of a one-year borrowing as the Assembly Speaker, as the Assembly plan does?
The Senate is going to stand strong for a multi-year approach to solving this problem. Well, let's see. I don't have an appointment till noon, so I don't know. I don't want to unduly raise the expectations. We should be, and we're going to endeavor to be, but, as I always say, more important to get it right, and we've got a chance here in this crisis to actually do something that fundamentally changes the way we deliver services.
Senator, what does this do to the Bronson realignment? Does it make any changes to the original realignment on health services?
No.
It keeps all that intact?
Yeah, keeps it intact. We do save mental health in our budget plan, of course, and will continue to do, as long as I'm a leader of this House.
Some of these programs, like the CalWorks programs being transferred to the local level? Are you
the Senate version has some cuts, but frankly, we feel not CalWorks.
The problem with CalWorks is if you take the $1.3 billion in local state match, however we decide to distribute that, you lose $4 billion in federal funds. I mean, it's not cost effective, it's not intelligent, and it would unemploy people because what CalWorks does is help people get employed. So. It's really not a sensible one at this point to cut. We've cut it a lot in the last few years, but the truth is the match is the match is the match. It's been the same number since 1998. It is not a growth program.
We're not looking to, make even deeper cuts to investments where we have already made deep cuts, and that includes education, includes higher education. We'd love to do some portion or all of the augmentation. That for higher education, but in order to do that, it's going to take some revenue to be able to do it. Yeah, Kula.
To follow up on that last question, just to address the perception problem. I know there's a hearing today on the danger of California's official rock, and at every time we miss the deadline, people tend to get frustrated. So if you can just address those types of things.
Hey, look I am darn proud of my colleagues who work day in and day out in their districts and up here in the Capitol to work on important things. It is a legislature of 120 people where everyone is entitled to bring forward their ideas as they relate to their districts, as they relate to their whatever their interests might be. And so in this messy democracy, there are going to be ideas that are easy to just sort of make fun of, and I accept that. That's part of the deal. But I can tell you, we are all focused on the most important thing, which is not only passing a state budget this year that is balanced, that maintains essential investments for kids and for the elderly and people in need, but that begins to pave a way to a better path for California and its finances.
Senator, the administration has intimated that it's difficult to engage in budget negotiations when the Democrats seem to be so far from each other. I think you said that your office and the Speaker's office is going to wind up working together on this stuff. When?
Well, we're working together now. We're getting together today at 5:30, and I think we plan to get together every day this week. And last year, I must say, when Karen Bass and I were. It was maybe a bit of an anomaly because you look back at the history. I mean, you look back at John Burton and various speakers, or Bill Lockyer and various speakers. You work together, but there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in a bicameral legislature with two houses and two leaders. Having a different approach. It's all how it ends. It's all how the game ends.
Planned by the Speaker.
I sure did.
And any
You should talk to him. I mean, he was very open. It was fun. Yeah, no, I went through it in detail with him. Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate it.
Great job.